Well, good afternoon. Hello, I'm Dominic Wallace, and we're going to be spending the next 45 minutes together looking at the issues of shared services and collaborative working and some of the pitfalls that exist within that. I think from our point of view, just need to handle a little bit about the logistics. If you can let us know you're here by clicking on the yellow hand at the side of the toolbar, please, that would be very helpful. That's a little yellow hand on the side of the toolbar. Right, excellent. I'm being told by my helpers, Sachel and Seb, that everything's ready to run. 36 of us at the moment, and over the next sort of 20-30 minutes, I'll propose some of the challenges of collaborative and shared service working, and then I hope that you'll by then have sent in a number of questions and we can begin to tackle those and work on those. How can we talk with each other? Well, there's a question panel on your screen, and as we go along, feed in your questions. I'll come back to them at the end, but if you can feed in your questions there. If you have any technical issues as we go along, feed those into that question box as well, and Sasha and Seb will try and sort you out if you need it. So we're off. Shared services, collaborative arrangements, joint ventures, what are the key pitfalls that public sector bodies often fail to adequately address? Let me just tell you a little bit about shared service architecture and why we're here working with CIPFA and Canterbury Christ Church University. We're a research-informed teaching company. Just turning my camera off so that you can see the full screen. We're a research-informed teaching company that focuses on skills development in shared services and collaborative working. And almost 3,000 public sector leaders and managers from councils, blue light, health, housing have attended our facilitated or taught programs across the last 8 years. And we partner with CIPFA and Canterbury Christ Church University in delivery of the postgraduate certificate in collaborative transformation. I'll talk a little bit about that further on. My personal background, well, I've been involved in collaborative working inside central government and across local authorities, police, fire, health, for about the last 20 years in one form or another. I suppose I have what people call the collaboration gene. Sometimes getting together with others, I feel, makes things work better. Many hands make light work, that kind of thing. But I also have a research master's in the skills and knowledge required in public sector collaborations. I've co-written 7 key collaboration toolkits that are used in over 500 public sector organisations, including over 200 councils. We're recognised as partners with the LGA, SAFOA. We're doing work with Policing College. And it's actually around this whole issue about the shrinking of funding means maybe sometimes, and I don't mean every time, maybe sometimes, working together will be better than trying to continue on your own. And we'll explore that in more detail. So we say we're a research-informed teaching company. Well, our work is academically underpinned, but it is fiercely practitioner-focused in terms of the toolboxes and the toolkits. But if you're interested in the academically underpinned bit, then the academic field for shared services is not called shared services. It's actually called inter-organisational relations. So if you go to Google Scholar, for example, and you type in shared services, you'll get about 350,000 academic papers, which a lot of learning in that, and we've gathered it into our toolkits. If you type in inter-organisational relationship, there's about 1.7 million papers. And that covers everything. And it covers a lot of the mistakes that are going to be made in devolution that are coming up. It covers a lot of the mistakes that are going to be made in blue light collaborations, health and social care. In fact, a lot of the mistakes that are being made currently, and Scottish Audit Commission has released a recent study of the problems, they were identified many years ago by the academics who go and research the success in companies, find case studies, draw them together. And what we do is we take those academic studies and turn them into learning and toolkits that can be used and applied where they need to be. So what are we going to cover today? Well, CITFA offer you a talk program. It's called CITFA's Collaborative Transformation Program. And we're going to look at the 3 key pitfalls of collaborative working. There's many of them, but actually we're going to look at the 3 key ones that are there. The program itself, it's for project managers who are involved in shared services, involved in devolution, blue light integration, health and social care, even mergers. If you're in housing, more and more mergers are coming up. And the issue is that there are specific skills which are required in collaborative working that are not required in silo working within an organisation. And if people attempt to apply silo skills to collaborative settings in general, they begin to fail. So let's have a look at the 3 key pitfalls. Sorry, that's not. This is the background to CITFA's Collaborative Transformation Program. It's in October this year. And there's a 3-day starter program. You can just come on the 3 days if you want to. And they address the main key pitfalls, and you'll walk away with about 100 tools, templates and techniques that you can start applying immediately. But the 3 days, they're part of Module 1 of the Postgraduate Certificate in Collaborative Transformation. And people can either do the 3 days and get what we call Collaborative Transformation Practitioner recognition, or they can continue and do the 6 months and become Collaborative Transformation Architects. And there's a link at the bottom of the page there, which if you click on that, it will take you off to the CITFA page. So that's October. Now don't forget, as we go along, please, you can ask questions about any of this as we go through the slides. Just pop them into the question box and I'll come back at the end and try to answer as many as possible. This is the collaboration journey map. When we talk about academically underpinned, what the academic work shows is that it is totally unavoidable. You've got to go through all these stages, and in order to be successful, you have to go through them in this order. You can't ignore it, you can't try and bounce around it. You've actually got to start through that journey. And if you notice, the very first one is collaborative leadership. And so often leaders are left out of the planning and work around collaborations until a business case is presented, or until suddenly a leader looks and reads the papers and says, well, what's going on there? I never said that could happen. So a lot of our work is preparing you to be able to facilitate the leaders. Could be your mayor, could be your council leader, could be your chief police officer, your police and crime commissioner, could be the health service trust chair, those kind of people, to actually stay in on that journey, not full time, but as they travel through, and be consulted and give it energy and power that you probably need to be successful. In the silo of an organisation, where it's an internal piece of work to be done, so often we start with a business case, because actually, we know each other already, the relationships are strong, there's a hierarchical nature to the employment structure, so therefore you have to get on and do it. You kind of know what the chief exec's looking for, maybe. If you start on a business case in a collaborative setting, actually a lot of things start going wrong, because you're probably basing it on the way things are done now. Whereas in fact, you've got to go back to the collaborative leadership and say, what do you want for the future? What's the vision? How can this be powered then by this collaboration that we're going to do, this piece of shared service working? So the key message from this and the academic work is that in a collaboration, and they're multi-partner, multicultural, multi-million-pound change management programs, 75% of the effort has to go into those first 3 arrows, and probably only about 25% into the last 3. However, we tend to put a lot more into the business case and the design and transform, only to find it falling over, because the leadership are saying, hang on a minute, you're ripping the guts out of my organisation, you're changing things, I don't want that to happen. Okay, a little bit of work for you to do, yeah? Here's an example. Language is everything in shared services, and we just need to understand what language we're speaking when we come together. So I've got 3 examples that we'll test, and we'll see how we get on. So, okay, here's our poll. And the question is, example 1, is this a collaboration or a shared service from your point of view? Okay. Now let's just share the result, shall we? There we are. So 86% say this is a collaboration and 14% say it's a shared service. Well, what's the right answer? Well, the answer is it's actually what the partners call it that's important. For example, if we were go to Serco and look at some work where things are being outsourced to them, they actually call it a shared service in partnership with, but actually it's more a supplier by a vehicle, but that's okay. But the importance is that language has to be everything that's done. Okay, let's take that off now. Let's have a look at the next one. What's the third one? Here we are. Hampshire County Council, real life case there. Right, is this a collaboration or a shared service? Oh, 100% say it's a shared service. Oh, they're still coming in. Okay, so 97% say it's a shared service. I think the difference between the two is probably best judged by the perception of what happens to the employees. So in example 1, which was police and fire, social care, working in a neighbourhood, sharing a budget, from the employee's point of view, they're not sharing any back office services. Nothing's changed in their contract or their support, HR, ICT, finance, terms and conditions. They haven't really changed. But on the front line, maybe on their day-to-day activity, delivery of service, things have changed. For example, that concept of one up the path. So instead of a health worker, drugs unit, youth services, education, all going up the path, maybe one representative goes up and works with them. And this was kind of shared in troubled families, a collaboration to do things, pooling some budgets in order to get on. Very valid piece of work. In this one, example 2, Hampshire County Council, you've judged it to be a shared service, and maybe within that context, through the employee's eyes, things have changed in the back office. Maybe the terms and conditions are being modified, or human resources is no longer in the same building now. Or the ICT system has changed, so when you log in, you're looking at a different screen, and you have to do something differently from that point of view. Or maybe you've even moved to a new place of work. Now, I look at Hampshire County Council here. What's actually happened is 140 of Oxford Council's people are moving down to Hampshire County Council to join in and work on a shared service which they've become involved with. Interesting learning point in terms of if you want to sell services. Hampshire County Council called their project initially H3 because it had police and fire. Now they've got additional partners joining them. They're changing it from H3 into another name. So you get how you name things to start out with. Talking of moving people, one of the interesting things is that there's no real evidence within the academic studies to show that there is huge benefit in co-locating people in order to share service. And often that is a management issue. Unless you're all in the same room and I can see you, I can't manage you, rather than a practical or economic issue. Leaving people where they are sometimes can be helpful. And Anthony Brand, who wrote a very important paper which influenced me back in 2006, called The Politics of Shared Service, talked about the local economic damage that can occur in actually taking a large number of people out of a town centre, for example, if it's a council, and putting them somewhere else. The impact on the local shops, local sandwich shops, pubs, bars, restaurants can be very high. and possibly outweigh the benefits sometimes of the few £1,000s you might save on a fairly small shared service in one form or another. Final one for you. Example 3. Well, Devo Mank. Here we are. Let's have a go. It's just a collaboration shared service. Okay, let's have a look and see what you said. So it's kind of half and half, isn't it, really? And this is interesting. If you're, hang on, just put that away now. If you're George Osborne, it's neither, actually. It's outsourcing. I was at a conference a few weeks ago when people were talking about Devo Mank, and a counsellor who was sitting next to me on the table said, well, actually, this £6 billion that they're getting for health probably has to solve a £10 billion problem. And so the thought that actually government could delegate responsibility, outsource its responsibilities to a locality and maybe get something for a lower price, well, that was what was on that councillor's mind. I'm not particularly saying anything, but it was an interesting thought, wasn't it? Whatever happens, though, across Manchester, the 10 councils are going to have to do greater collaborative working. And the approach they're going to have to take is a collaborative approach and not a silo approach. But actually, also at the same meeting, when I was talking to people, the questions are beginning to be asked about, well, why do we need 10 planning departments? Why do we need 10 ICT systems? Are we going to run a separate health system from a separate local authority system? Or is it actually we begin over the coming maybe 10, 15 years to merge those together, to blend them, especially to share some of the data, which is really important from their point of view. Okay, let's have a look at our 3 key pitfalls of collaborative working. Okay, in your experience, another little questionnaire, what do you feel is the key pitfalls? Just choose one of these 3, because I'm going to explore them all, but let's see which ones you feel is most important. Okay, let's have a look and see what you said. Oh, leadership. 22% of the business case, 16% project leads are not given the authority. On the CIPA program, we teach across the 3 days, each of those addressed in the 3 days of the teaching. And they are the key pitfalls that come up time and time again in academic studies and in real life. Those kind of issues are very important. So let's have a look at them each in turn. Leadership fail to lead collaboratively. Well, here's one of the issues straight away. I was speaking to a council chief executive some years ago, and they've consequently gone to retire, but they were saying how hard it was to work with the council next door because for about 10 years under the CPA and the Audit Commission, they had been competing with them. You'd get out of bed in the morning and look at their stats versus his, and then he'd decide how they could actually get higher stats and be in the excellence. And now he's being asked to collaborate with them. He said initially he found that quite hard. And it is an issue that comes up. Lots of people are in leadership roles because they want to be in charge. More modern leadership roles tend to facilitate change, but actually a lot of people were brought up under the kind of Alan Sugar, lead from the front, be over the top, sack people who don't follow you, those kind of things. That has to change really. You have to lead collaboratively. And often leaders these days in devolution or whatever, find themselves facilitating the space where the other leaders and themselves can be successful, rather than actually leading from the front, because the only glue they have in their leadership role in something like devolution is the glue of trust and Newton's law of shared services. People do shared services with people they like. It's that simple. I learned a long time ago, if two leaders don't like each other but they say I want to do shared services, it's not going to get very far. So that's something to bear in mind. The other issue is leaders need to stay in the room. They don't really necessarily understand what is going to happen as a result of the collaborations. And for many shared services, for devolution or whatever, it's going to change the way they personally will have to work, and it's going to be disruptive to their organisation unless, rather than talking about the money on the table in devolution, they actually make sure that devolution aligns itself with their strategic narrative and direction for their organisation. I was teaching up north in the Manchester area, and I did ask some council leaders, how does DevoMank align with your strategic narrative here? And they looked at me and realised actually it didn't. So you're trying to pull your authority in one direction, but DevoMank is trying to pull you in another. And I think that is a key issue which is going to be a challenge over the coming months from their point of view. I think the other thing as well is they send people off to write business cases. So well-meaning senior managers, senior leaders, directors, consultants, they go off and they write a business case, and in the corner, in kind of darkened room, 4 or 5 people coming together, and they bring it out and they show it. It's kind of show and tell moment, isn't it? Ta-da! Look what we've written is a business case. And then suddenly it dawns on the leaders, because they haven't been involved in its development, what the impact may be on their authority. We'll be talking about business cases in a minute, but actually leaders need to stay in the room at strategic moments. It's really, really important that they do that. And as I say, they need to facilitate the relationships that they have with people. A way that can be done is very simply asking these key questions of leaders before you embark on shared service or collaborative working. So these are strategic decision makers, the mayor, the leader of the council, the chair of the health trust, the chief executive or whatever. And the first question you have to ask in the efficiency matrix is one, what don't you want to collaborate on? What don't you want to share? Let's get that on the table first before we start talking about anything else. What is really key? So we see things like development control planning appearing from councils, children's services, under police, it's kind of, well, warranted officers. We want to keep that under our control. We don't want to share that with others. Lots of things. But in their hearts, as leaders, what do they want to tough it out on and keep 100% control of? And that is really very important. Because the other 3 choices, things like stop doing or maybe sell to others, or outsourcing, or collaborate, should only be used for the purpose of powering the tough it out work. That's their purpose. To actually do a shared service or a collaboration because it feels nice to do a shared service or a collaboration really is ineffective, and time that's been proven. Though when you collaborate with others so that the leadership can keep stuff 100% under their control in a tough it out box, it is more effective. The leadership will power the collaboration more, or the outsourcing. They will step in because what is in the tough it out is very important to them. If you look at the boxes as well, tough it out, you've got 100% control over what you do. It's yours. You can come in the morning, you can say, hey, gang, I was thinking over the weekend, I'm going to take this particular service over there. Here we go, yeah, all right, boss, so off they go and do it. But actually, if you're in the collaborate with others boxes, you come in the morning and you say, hey gang, I want to take it over there, but actually I've got to phone up and talk to 3 other organisations and their chief execs and ask them if it's okay if I do this. And then they say things like, yeah, we think it's really good, however, it will have to go to council. And actually the council doesn't meet for another 2 months. So you have to wait. And so things that go in a tough it out box are the ones that you want 100% control over, you want total agility, you don't have to consult with others. Outsourcing, well, you're probably 80% in control. It's a supplier-buyer relationship. You can sack the supplier if they don't step up to the mark. But when you collaborate with others, when you step into that, you're in participatory leadership, not hierarchical leadership. And that is found hard by some leaders in that space. Another question leaders must be asked: how radical are you prepared to be? Here's three little sums. You'll find these quite useful. Sometimes, rather than a large, thick Microsoft Word linear document, you can just stick these on a flip chart and ask this question. Okay. 3 sums of collaborative working. 1 + 1 = 1.5. So all we do is take the way things are done now and we deliver them with a smaller team. Don't really tinker with them, we just deliver them with a smaller team. So there used to be 2 teams of 20, but we've combined them into a team of 30, and hopefully they will deliver what is already being delivered. Now, this is the usual shared service in local government. I have to say local government is light years ahead of most of the rest of the country in shared services. We've just been researching for the Local Government Association the new shared service map for 2016, and we've got over 300 shared services. Over 90% of councils are involved in them, and there's a lot of learning going on there. And that should be published probably in May, June time. But the 1 + 1 = 1.5 tend to underperform. Why do they underperform? Well, actually, you're clashing together the way things are done now. And often the way things are done now were designed 4 or 5 years ago and maybe are no longer appropriate for the next 4 or 5 years. So you've got to do something radically different. You've got to change. This is an opportunity in shared services to actually do something different, something new, better, and lower cost. Those are the 3 key issues around collaborative working. Whatever you do, it must be new, it must be better than it is now, and it must be at a lower cost. 1 + 1 = 2 is actually when you share something like co-locate. So police and fire co-locate together in a centre, and then you sell the building. So actually you make more money out of selling the building that's been left behind by relocating people. It's examples like that. They work essentially though, you continue to deliver things that are now, and then when your expense comes up, it's because you have to redesign. You didn't do it at that point of change where maybe there's some cash in the system. You actually have to redesign the service. 1 + 1 = 3 is the brave and the bold. But actually this is an opportunity for change. And that's when you need to say to the leaders, what do you want out of this? What do you want to be different? We're talking here about children's services. What do you want to be different in children's services as a result of doing that? And that's when leaders get what we call skin in the game. The fact that they're actually totally involved. They come into the room wanting to stay in the room for many of the important moments in time rather than delegating it across to good officers. But it's only when the good officers come back and say, show and tell moment, is it like this, that the leaders go, no, I never meant that. New, better, lower cost opportunities for change. That's what 1 + 1 = 3 leads to. And all shared services should be focusing in on that. Okay, if you've got questions on this, please fill in the box. I'm just going to move on to the next part, which is about business cases. Time for you to answer a question. Let's just choose a poll. Okay. In business case drafting, which do you feel are one of the 3 main issues? Which one do you feel is the most important issue that occurs in this kind of work? Okay, let's just share that with you. Yes, you're my kind of people. They focus on the financial savings rather than the vision and purpose. It's all 3. But I don't even think we need academic research, do we? So many senior directors or managers that I've met who are saying, well, I kind of do the shared service bit in the business case between 3 o'clock on a Friday afternoon, 3 and 5 o'clock on a Friday afternoon, because the rest of my week is just hectic. I'm doing all this on top of my day job. When there was funding around, we used to be able to have really good consultants who would come in and support us and do this kind of thing, but there isn't as much funding these days. So consequently, business cases are often under-resourced. Not developed collaboratively is really important. They tend to be good people who will go off into over the weekend, they'll work till 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock at night, writing all this, come back and do, as I call it, a show and tell. They need to be developed iteratively, and the leadership need to be continuously present. And the way that's done is through gateway reviews. And often when I'm asking people about how their gateway reviews are structured for their business case, they don't have them. It's just something they write and produce. And the final thing is lacking the public sector purpose. Actually, no one gets out of bed to cut £2 million off ICT. Really, the employees, the staff, whatever, does that make them excited? Does that make them work towards it? But actually, you know, if 1,000 people a year, like in Manchester, are dying of late cancer diagnosis, and this is one of the DEVO targets, and they want to reduce that, then actually, if you can save a couple of £1 million off the ICT that can go into reducing the number of people that die, then that will get people out of bed in the morning for the noble purpose of actually doing it. It's very important that we link it to those factors. Finally, project team skills and authority. Well, this is an issue which is a really important pitfall. Traditionally, projects are actually brought about by service directors, senior managers or whatever, and a project team's asked to come in and work on their directorate in order to sort something out, work on their department, their service. However, when there are shared services and there's only going to be one service director left, in my naivety working with local authorities, I brought 8 heads of building control into a room and tried to persuade them to do shared services. And they looked at me and said, well, Dominic, at the end of the day, there's only be one of us left, so I don't think we're that interested. When there's many service directors, when there's senior managers who may lose their job if the transformation program team are successful, then actually asking the transformation team to report into them is madness. What we do have to do is actually have the collaborative working team report into the decision makers above what we call the casualty line. Also, it requires specific skills with the project team, and those are the skills which are taught through the SIPFA program. Which is probably a good time to come back to it and then move to any questions that we might have. Here's the SIPFA program. There's 3 days, which is kind of the starter side. You can attend one individual day, or you can attend all 3 days. If you attend the 3 days, you're already stepping onto Module 1 of the Postgraduate Certificate at Canterbury Christ Church University. And SIPFA hold them here in London, but actually they can be delivered in-house as well for teams for 3-day periods. So, time for you to actually ask me more questions, please, if you have them. Great, we're just getting the questions out on the screen. Okay, we have one from Mark Whiffen. Hello, Mark. How does the speed of the process to get it up and running impact on its success? Is it quick, better, or slow? Mark, that's a really, really good question. Quick is better but really it depends what you're doing and how long the process has to be. The reason quick is better, for example, is the cost of delay barometer. I don't know if you use cost of delay barometers, but actually, if you're going to save, let's keep it easy, suppose you're going to save £365,000 a year across the partnership, then actually once it's up and running and delivering, then you're going to be saving £1,000 a day. So actually the thing you need to do is you need to set a notional start date, and you need to have a notional amount of money. You divide it, and that works out how much a day you're going to save once the service is being delivered. And so consequently, from that point of view, if you delay the process, you hoped you were going to deliver it start delivering on the 1st of January 2017, and it's delayed by 3 months, well that's 90 days, and you've actually lost £90,000. So if it is about saving money, then it's actually about getting there as fast as possible. If it's about saving lives, it's about getting there even faster than possible. Thank you for the questions that is coming in now. Let me just go back to the next one, which came in from Louisa. Hello, Louisa. Hi. Please can we have a written explanation of the 1+1 scenarios? Yes, you can. That's part of the talk program, but I have that. If some of you have been on our program, you'll have got a copy of that anyway, but I can pass that across to CITFA. Maybe they could send that out to you as well. Next one, Amanda Galvin. Is the feedback from councils that shared services fulfil their key needs in practical terms? That is a good one. That is a good one. They're getting better at it, Amanda. That's all I can say. We have to respect the fact that actually the first shared service you ever do, like me, it was rubbish. It was dreadful. You get better at it, I think. Majority of shared services try to mimic the private sector. And what's interesting is the private sector is you rarely see shared services between sovereign organisations. You tend to see them internally. They get their shared services internally right and make them better businesses, rather than actually Tesco's trying to do shared services with I don't know, another shopping organisation or firm. So the question is, what is their key needs in practical terms? And if that's at the beginning, if that's set out clearly at the beginning, and that's the target of the business case, they should be more successful. The other interesting news from the world of inter-organisational relations is that 50 to 70%, frightening figure this, 50 to 70% of all shared service working, and listen to me, doesn't fail. What it does is it fails to deliver on the promise of the business case. Why? Well, it goes back to the leadership changing things continuously, not staying in the game, not understanding the impact it will have, under-resourced business cases, and business cases not being written collaboratively. How can you measure success? Actually, Robert, yeah, we've got a tool in our toolbox on the third day, which is around what do people want out of this and what is their vision of success before they start. But it's not a numerical success. It's actually about what is the purpose of this shared service in the context of the strategic narrative of the organisation, rather than done on its own. And then you can see what the outcomes are at the end of the day. So it could actually be, rather than saying we want to save £1 million in ICT, it's actually we want to build a better ICT structure in order to deliver better services out to vulnerable children. We want to use our ICT success in order to deliver better services to residents in our housing associations. And that's the measure. And if you constantly have that sort of posted up in the room saying that's what we're aiming for, then you'll find that so long as you're doing new, better and lower cost, that actually the outcomes are the kind of success that you want. Prakash Gohil is saying, does political aims have an impact on collaborative working? Yes, absolutely, and that is why the very first arrow on that journey map is collaborative leadership. They must want the same things. And also you can see it, Prakash, in terms of look at OneSource. So you've got a Labour Newham Council mayor and a Conservative council next door, and and they do shared services together through OneSource. Why? Well, I've actually met them. They like each other. People do shared services with people they like. Some Labour councils won't do shared services with the Labour council next door because a political leader or member had a spat at a Labour Party conference, or don't take Labour, take Lib Dem, Conservative, whatever. It's about relationships and people, and that's why the political ambitions don't have to be identical, but they have to be aligned in order for things to work. Seeing a little bit of that over in 2020 in Gloucester, where they're talking about Coxit, C-O-X-I-T, like Brexit, where actually one of the councils is talking about exiting that shared services to do working with another one, kind of divorce, if you like. So yeah, there's political aims, ambitions, all those kind of things. I think one of the big political aims that will have an impact on collaborative working nationally is devolution. Devolution will redraw certain boundaries. For example, and I'm just giving an example here, I don't mean it's going to happen, but you have local government shared services with Northamptonshire, and you have it with Cambridgeshire. But Cambridge possibly, it's still yet to be determined, but possibly Cambridgeshire will become part of the East Anglia powerhouse with Peterborough and others. Do they necessarily want their shared services in the East Anglia powerhouse to be run out of Northampton, unless Northampton steps in? So there's all kinds of political things going on at the moment which are disruptive in a sense. There's a question here which says, collaborations between a number of local authorities delivering the same service would provide a better service, but management only want cost savings and say it doesn't produce enough to be worthwhile looking into further. How can you convince management that cost doesn't have to be the driver? Although I realise costs are important. That's Catherine, you're asking that one. Okay, Catherine, yeah, often the driver is actually because people have been told to do shared services with each other. And Minister Eric Pickles was extremely good at this, when in fact there weren't often business cases for doing it. What will power it is actually the noble purpose, and it may be that you do it even though the cost savings are not going to be particularly high. If you're not going to get more than 15% out of a shared service, then don't bother even starting on it. It's not worth it. Stick it in the tough it out box or outsource it, because the hassle and the length of time to align partners and get all those things together for anything less than 15% savings, it's really not worth doing, especially if 50 to 70% do not deliver on the promise of the business case. And even though it might say you're going to get 10, 12%, you might only get 5, 6%. Not worth getting out of bed for, really. So yes, Catherine, get them to focus in on the outcomes that are better for the resident, the citizen, the student, if you're a university, the victim, if you're police, fire. That's really what it is about. And then we can work better. But those, when you do those, it's not shared services, it's a collaboration on the front line often that has a higher impact from that point of view. How does culture, current practices of different organisations impact on the effectiveness of collaboration? Good point, Caroline Jenkins. It really is important. People don't pay enough attention to that. These are multi-partner, multi-culture, multi-million-pound change management programs, but people don't treat them as change management programs. They focus on the deal and not the relationship, and it must be 75% relationship. It's almost like the day the service is launched, it's all over now, we can all go back to working how we were. You can't do that. It takes probably about 2 years to set up a substantive shared service where you have to tune people, do all those kind of bits and pieces anyway because of EU law and all those kind of things. But also it takes about 3 years to embed. So something that's starting in 2016, you really won't see the true fruits of it up and running and motoring nicely, probably till 2020. But you must focus on the culture and current practices. I always like the fact that many business owners say they would never actually buy an existing business. They prefer to start it from scratch, from zero, and build upwards. And that's really what the 1 + 1 = 3 sum is about. It's about, actually, this is going to be new, so therefore already the staff know that it's not going to be the same thing as how it was delivered before. It's going to be different, and so therefore the experience of the customer on the front end is going to be different, and it's going to be lower cost, so you can save there. Lorraine Penman, you've given me a question. Have there been any example where organisations have shown trust in working together and achieve their vision? Lorraine, the answer is yes, time after time after time after time. In low governance areas, it's worked. And often there's stuff going on, neighbourhood policing, all those kind of things, which actually are highly effective and get disturbed deeply when people start trying to formalise them. And it's about the relationships. That's really the importance, yeah. So trust, building trust, and on day 2 of the CITFA program, you can see we spent a whole day on looking at building trust and shared services, and we've got 40 tools, templates and techniques which support that. It's really, really important. If I were parachuted in tomorrow into a shared service which seemed to be struggling, my initial focus would not be on the business case, it would not be on any of the stats or the data, it would actually be on the relationship between the leadership and see how strong that is and how stronger I could make it. Is there an issue around the relative sizes of partners? Amanda is asking, is there a reluctance among some smaller councils that sharing services with a larger one will result in their service being treated with less priority by the new larger body? Yes to both questions, Amanda. Yeah, don't go beyond the best shared service between two organisations. You know, I've seen one where there's 5 councils going to do something. If it's something like 5CP, the combined procurement, that's going to actually happen, then fine. Procurement's different. Procurement's not a shared service in a sense. It's about working in parallel together to buy stuff. You can ask me a question about that if you like. But yeah, many smaller councils, they think someone's going to take over. Yeah, I won't name names, but that's happened time after time again. But that's about the collaborative leadership, isn't it? It's about the leadership of the larger organisation saying, okay, we won't lead on this. We will allow you, the smaller authority. So if I think back to the early days of Lincolnshire shared service working, one of the districts was appointed as the lead authority on that one. And I think we've come to the end of the questions. So thank you very much indeed for joining me today. I hope maybe you'll consider coming along to at least one of the days on the CITFA Collaborative Transformation Programme. If you want to get hold of me, then that's my details. If you want to talk about the course, then contact CITFA about it, and that's the most important area that you can do. And so we promised actually that we will send out the tool, the 1+1 = tool, to you all so that you can actually have a look. Thank you very much indeed.